All right, so today we're working on a Suburban 99 GMC. We got a little bit of a glare. Anyways, we're gonna change the rotor and the brake pads. First thing first, make sure you're safe. Get the tire off. Make sure you use your jack stands. And what I did is, the way I do it is, you can see our pads are worn here. I took this pry bar and I worked it in there. So when we started, the pad was touching the rotor there, and so I just put this pry bar in and pried against the rotor and the caliper right there. I guess against the pad would be what it would be called. Anyway, so you just put your pry bar in there, pry against the pad and the rotor, and just work that. And you can see this piston, it'll compress. And what that does is, when you go to put your brake pads in, you don't have to bleed your brakes. You don't have to undo the brake line. And so what we're gonna do is, we're just gonna undo these two studs back here. You got one here and one here. It's an Allen and it's 3/8. And so put it there, and then we just loosen that up. Looks like it's a little tighter than I like. And you can use a breaker bar if you got one. Here's a breaker bar. So I'll put a breaker bar on that. What we'll do is we'll undo this pin, and then it'll allow this to slide out. Just be careful you don't put too much tension on your brake line right here when you slide this out. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll continue in a second. Okay, I pulled the pins out. We just grabbed the caliper. It sits on here like this. Well, you get the idea. You pull the pins out, then slide it up like this, grab it, and then just set it right there like that. And so what I'm gonna do is, my kit comes with some new rubber boots right here. So just take a screwdriver, pry that off. And make sure you have these before you pry it off. You don't have to put them back on. One thing is, there's a little bit of rust that came in there. So I just take my screwdriver and I scrape this rust line off just a little bit. I mean, don't gouge it. The other thing you want to do is slide these out and grease them just a little bit. These ones actually aren't too bad. If they're rotted, these seals right here, it's up to you. You can grab a pick, pop those out, and push in the new seals if your kit has it. I like these seals better than what came in my kit, so I'm not gonna replace that. But we'll slide this out. See, it's just a bushing. You can see there's a little bit of grease on there. We'll just probably dab that a little bit, and then we'll slide that back in there. You've got two of those, one on this side and one right here. Anyway, so I'm gonna do that, and then I'll show you guys how I get the pads on. All right, so pulled that out. Already did that side, pulled this side out. Just put a little grease on there, not too much. Slide it in there like that. Make sure it slides freely. Check both of them, just like that. I'll go ahead and pop this one off. I've got ya. They're a little tricky. Kind of work them off. All right, there we go. See that? Work it in there. Pull that off. And then, if it's kind of gooped right here, grab a rag, wipe that off. Okay, then you get your new pads. And what you're gonna wanna do is, you're gonna wanna get your grease, and you're gonna wanna pay attention to how these pads come off. So this is the back side. See, we flipped it up out of the way and set it on its top. And this is the rear pad. We're just gonna wanna pay attention how that comes off. So we're gonna take this piece off. We're gonna grab our grease. And then we'll pull little tab of grease, a little dab of grease on this tab right here. You don't want too much, just a little bit right along that tab so it can go in and out when the piston pushes on it. All right, so I put a little dab of grease up there on the tab. I slid that tab in. It has these forks right here. Just slide it in like that. And here's the tab. Put a little bit of grease on that tab right there, and then I just seated that tab into here. But make sure your forks are lined up on that side. See, it came off a little bit. I'll just push it flat. I'm gonna go and put it in. This side, we pull these tabs up and just kind of work it out. It's not too tight, but it does take a second. There we go. See, just like that. And we have a new one. Slide it in there just like that. A little tricky. One-handed. Just like that. One-handed, guys. You can do it even if you're new. All right. This little out of place. Make sure the grease from your fingers, you don't get it on the pad. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab this. As I drop it, don't drop it. Like I did. All right, there we go. So your caliper looks like that. You slide it on here. You see how nice, it's nice and smooth. Our caliper width is perfect, and just kind of work it in there. You feel it go. All right, just trying to do that one hand. Sorry, guys. I wouldn't go on, wouldn't seat right. This pin, these slide. Remember we pulled these out and greased it? It just had slid in, was catching the bottom of the rotor. Just make sure you slide it out. Oh, and actually, we forgot to change our rotor. We'll do that real quick. I'll show you how easy that is. All right. Here's our new rotor. I got vented and slotted rotors. Figured it'd help you stop a little bit. And they didn't cost too much more than cheap ones. I just bought this on Amazon. These are Detroit axle. They're pretty good. They look like they're good quality. And look, that's a big improvement. Anyways, just like that, boom. Slide it like that. Here's that pin that slid forward. See, caught my rotor. So just push that in, push the top one in. And then we'll grab this, pads are in. And then just rotate it. There we go. I guess eventually we'll be super pros at video editing and all that stuff if anybody likes my stuff. Anyways, boom, there's that. See how that's nice and level? You just rub your hand over it. See the bottom one's nice. We're in between that. Okay, so what I like to do, put a little grease on here. I got my grease gun right here. Squeeze that a little bit. I mean a little, see, just a little. And what I like to do a little easier is I put it in the top one and just kind of rotate this until you feel the bolt catch. And just put it in slowly until it catches. Kind of wiggle this a little bit so you make sure you're in the right spot. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your bottom one, do the same thing, put a little grease on it. And what we're going to do is we didn't tighten the top one down all the way because what we want to do is try and get that grease to stay in there. what we want to do is move the bottom one so it catches. So we get our threads. It's good in there. The top one's in. So see, we don't have any alignment issues. And then we just grab our Allen. We just, you want to make sure it's not binding. That's why I started it by hand. So just do both of these, tighten them down. Okay, tightened everything down. You can see we're all good, brand new pads. And then what I like to do is just put a little bit of grease on this rust area right here. I scraped it with a screwdriver a little bit. And that's, put a little bit down there. And you take these little rubber caps, and kind of push them on there, right? Problem is they don't get all the way on there, so I'll show you what to do about that in a second. That one slid on nicely. Anyways, what I like to do is grab a socket, boom, and make sure the socket's big enough to slide over. And this is, what size is that? It's a 13/16. So see how it slides over there? And then take our handy rubber mallet right here, or dead weight hammer, I guess you would call it. Either one will work. And just tap it gently. And you just look. See that? That's pretty seated. See that? And then you just wiggle that off. This one back on. And just look. Nice and seated. Well, we could tap it one more, I think. Anyways, it looks like that's all it's going to see. And that's why we get that rust ring. So just take that grease you put on and just kind of seal that hole. They seat, but they're not the best. But water shouldn't get in there anyways. And then just make sure you check your pin bolts. Make sure they're tight. Good to go. Okay, that's it. And then just put on the tire. It should be good to go. As long as you didn't fill up your brake reservoir when your brake pads went down. Spreading this won't do anything, but if you added brake fluid, when you spread that, a little brake fluid will leak out in your master cylinder. I didn't do that, but I'll check the master cylinder, make sure it's good, brake fluid reservoir, and put the tire on, and then I'll do a bunch of panic stops, because you kind of want to wear that surface down so the pads and that surface wear together. And important thing is don't touch the rotor with grease on your fingers. And same with the pads. Make sure your fingers don't have grease on them. Okay guys, thanks, bye. Okay, tires back on. Lug nuts aren't yet. What I like to do is just put a little bit of grease on the threads here. I should have done that. Just wipe my finger on these when I had the tire off. You don't have grease, not a big deal. The other thing that's a little trick I didn't mention is if you turn the wheel so that you can get in here to those caliper pins and get those off, makes it a lot easier. And then I just use the tire as a seat, so I could sit here and just work on it. Makes it a little easier because this is a big Suburban. All right, guys, if you have any questions, comment and subscribe. Thanks.